Namaste and welcome to a very special episode of the Bharat Varta podcast, where we deep dive on the upcoming Bihar elections. We look at what the current sentiment is like, what are some influencing factors, and discuss strategies for the various parties involved. I have with me Vivek Khaitan, who is an entrepreneur and also hails from Bihar. Hi, Vivek.
Hi, Kerry. Good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you as well. So we have our resident election nerd, Rohit Jayaraman, as well with us. Hi, Rohit.
Hi, Gary.
So US politics to
Great to be
Bihar
back.
politics, that's a seamless transition, yes?
Yeah, first India, then the world.
All right. And finally, we have our man of all work, the versatile Mr. Ashish Chandorkar, politics, policy, and Poha. Hi, Ashish.
Hi, Carrie. We got a lot of flack for Rohit creating a Biden wave. So hopefully he will have some better predictions this time.
So it's his time to make up for that, right? So, all right. So I guess, let's start with some predictions on, what is likely to happen in the election. So I'll just go around the table. So maybe we can start with Vivek. Vivek, where is your money at right now?
Well, I would put my money on NDA now. Maybe I wouldn't have done that 3 months back because all said and done, the last 5 years have not really been great in terms of either governance or development in Bihar. But the management of COVID in last 3 months is something that has given a leg up. And that's a tailwind which should help the NDA tide over the line.
Right. Ashish, do you also feel the same way?
Let me break it into two parts. So when it comes to winning the elections, the NDA can win the elections. I would say, the two opinion polls which have come out, Steve Voter and Lokniti have both predicted between 130 and 150, 160 seats. So I'm guessing that I would have guessed the same, that it would be somewhere in that range, in the lower end of that range. But what happens after the election, it will be quite important as well. If JDU wants to reconsider its alliance with BJP, etc. So some of that will play out like it did last time in the other way, where RJD and JDU were together and then Nitish switched back to NDA. So I think that part will be quite interesting to watch as well for Bihar.
All right. Rohit, your prediction? So who is the Biden equivalent in Bihar, you would say?
My prediction would be, I agree with Ashish and Vivek. I think the NDA should be able to win this election fairly easily. I think the BJP would be the single largest party, but again, I would differ with Ashish that I think it will be a fairly smooth continuation, and Nitish Kumar will continue to be the CM of Bihar, BJP backing him. I have some thoughts on maybe how the other parties will fare, but I'll get to that later.
Sure. So Ashish, taking off from where Rohit left, we have the election results of 2015 on screen as well. For those of whom who are watching on YouTube, right? So many parties and alliances. Will the head-to-head strength matter on the ground?
Yeah, let me just recap the alliances which are there, and quite a few parties, as you said, right? So there's of course the NDA, which is led by Nitish Kumar in the state, with BJP, Vikashsheel Insan Party, and the Hindustani Awam Morcha as a constituent. So those four parties. Lok Janshakti Party, LJP, is in the NDA in Delhi, but it is not in the alliance in Bihar, as very categorically stated by Amit Shah in two of his interviews in the last 2 days with News 18 and with Z. So they obviously, like Chirag Paswan made statements like, if you tear his heart open, you will see PM Modi residing there and so on. Clearly, it looks like he has to fight the election on his own name right now. BJP doesn't seem to be endorsing, at least directly, their presence. So that's the second part of, a fringe part of NDA. And then, of course, there's a Mahagathbandhan, which is the RJD led by Tejasvi Yadav, who's a putative CM candidate in case the UP wins in alliance with Congress. And then, of course, the three communist parties, CPI, ML, CPI, and CPIM. So that's the main party. But I think what is probably being, what should be interesting is that there are a whole bunch of other alliances as well, which are contesting this election. So there is the Jan Adhikar Party of Pappu Yadav, which is an alliance with the party floated by Chandrasekhar Azad. That is one of the polls. There is the UDA, which is Yashwant Sinha and 20 other parties cobbled up for putting candidates against the NDA. There is also the something called the UDSA, or United Democratic Secular Alliance, and there's also there's also United Democratic Alliance, or UDA. So a lot of alphabet soup there, different small parties coming together and kind of looking at their specific pockets of strength where they can make a difference. But not sure if they'll be able to win any seats. But a lot of them can actually become like what we say in Hindi, vote katua parties, which is that they may influence specific seats depending on their strength areas. And on the head-to-head, Carrie, what is interesting is that if you look at and this information was collated by a Twitter user by the name of Manoj Dinkar. Pretty interesting information around the head-to-head contest. He had tweeted this a few days ago on like BJP is taking on RJD on 61 seats. I'm reading this from a tweet right now. So BJP takes on RJD on 61 seats, Congress on 37 seats, CPI-ML on 8, CPI on 3, and CPM on 1. There was JDU versus RJD on 71, Congress 28, CPI-ML 10, CPI 3, CPM 3. Then there's VIP versus RJD on 9, Congress 1, CPI-ML 1. And Hindustani Awam Morcha versus Congress on 4 and RJD on 3. So a lot of the results will also depend on like how the various parties support each other, how the cadre comes together, if at all. What support does LJP get from the BJP cadres, RJD cadres, depending on where they are contesting. So a lot of those question marks, bottom up things, which will only play out when on the day of the polling. So while I think the macro trends seem like all the surveys seem like backing NDA right now, there could be some small surprises, at least in pockets, depending on how the turnout is on the voting day and which party has an upper hand on the ground.
Right. Rohit, on that note, what do you see as the strength of the NDA alliance?
Yeah, thanks for that, Ashish, for setting the context, and Carrie for this very pertinent question. I think what a lot of people forget about the NDA in Bihar, and I think there's been a lot of commentary that Nitish Kumar is struggling and BJP will backstab him, etc., is that primarily it is probably the most successful alliance in Indian politics in the 21st century, right? The Bihar NDA. I mean, it's in its present form, it has not lost an election for 15 years. It has won elections when things were really bad for the BJP. I mean, JDU obviously doesn't count outside Bihar, but nationally it's in 2009 and 10. When BJP was down and out in most of India, the Bihar NDA gave stellar results. It was not even like, they sneaked through or anything. It gave huge results. And that's probably because, and if you look at the 2019 Lok Sabha results, and of course we know that those results are particularly, easily translated into assembly poll wins. But if you just look at it, it at least shows the ceiling, right? And it's a very, very high ceiling for the NDA in Bihar. That primarily comes from two reasons, right? First is that the BJP under the Prime Minister is extremely popular in Bihar. Bihar, if you remember, was the site of that Hunkar rally in 2013 when there were bombs going on, etc. in Patna. And that's, I think, the day for a lot of people, Narendra Modi became the front runner, right? Like from then on, it just was a sort of a wave that took him to the PM post over the next 8-9 months from that day in 2013 in Bihar. And that popularity really, at least, till 2019, I don't know whether something has changed in the last 8-9 months. The last 1 year has not really changed. And then you have the JDU, which serves a particular purpose in Bihar, right? And the only reason why the BJP lost in 2015 was because it didn't have the JDU with it. The JDU is easily the third largest party in Bihar. Like, I don't think even Nitish Kumar will try to say that he is more powerful today than the BJP or the RJD. The point is the JDU has a large, manages to get a fairly sizable section of voters who do not want RJD to rule Bihar for various reasons, but are also not fully interested in trusting the BJP, at least at the state level, right? And that's where the JDU adds value to the BJP's alliance. Like, even historically, Bihar differs from UP in the sense that while in UP the BJP and the socialists were always equal when they challenged the Congress, BJP has always been much more of a junior player in Bihar till the rise of PM Modi, and that's where Nitish Kumar fills that void. And that complementarity still exists. The BJP, because of its cadre, has the infrastructure, which is why the BJP strike rate is always better. But more importantly, the BJP does also pull the JDU across the line in a lot of seats, right? As in the JDU primarily is a one-man show. Like it's just Nitish Kumar, bunch of people stand on his symbol. Its cadre is not really that strong, whatever Prashant Kishore might have tried in 2015. And that way there is some level of complementarity, right? And that's why the NDA in Bihar is successful. The LJP has left the NDA. LJP is of course a new entrant in the NDA. The sense that at least with the JDU around in 2019 is the first time the LJP fought with Nitish and the BJP in almost 20 years. I think he had fought in 99 or 2019, and he was then still in the JDU, Ramvilas Paswan. I think in first time that the LJP fought with the BJP and the JDU. So LJP's exit, of course, it reduces the arithmetic to some extent, but it's not really fielding candidates against the BJP, so that's almost half the seats gone. The LJP primarily will try to seek some capitalize some anti-incumbency votes that would people who are otherwise happy with the NDA but don't really, or at least with the BJP but don't want Nitish Kumar to continue being the CM. That's where I think the LJP might play a slightly different role to what a lot of people expect.
Right. So on that note, Vivek, what do you think the game plan is here for LJP? Why is Chirag Paswan acting the way he is? Ashish mentioned a few things as well about him in the context that he set. What do you think about this?
Yeah. So, before talking about Paswan, see, one of the interesting things about the present NDA alliance is that it's essentially a two-party alliance, which has not been the case in the, let's say, past two elections, where there have always been some flavor of either, Paswan's party or Kushwaha's party who have been taking away some seats. The other interesting part of the NDA alliance is that this is perhaps the first time where BJP is playing an equal role in terms of the number of seats that it is contesting. If you see, BJP has always been the larger party of the two, and yet they have happily played second fiddle to Nitish for 25 years, especially in the Atal Advani era. It was assumed that Nitish will be the face as well as the dominant partner in the alliance. And this is something which mirrored, let's say, even Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, which for the union elections became the junior partner, but for the local elections or the assembly elections was always the senior partner. So the interesting dynamic is something which this will perhaps play out later, where BJP now being equal to Nitish in terms of seats and would perhaps be the largest party. Maybe the local leadership, the Bihar leadership of BJP will no longer play second fiddle as easily as they have done for the past 20 years. So this is one of the interesting part of the NDA alliance dynamics that remains to be seen, especially in the post-election period. So Ramvilas Paswan has been one of the towering leaders of Bihar, even though his electoral footprint has been rather limited all through his career. But he has always been seen as Mausam Vaigyanik, someone who always ended up on the winning side. And for his son now, he is no more, and his son has to create his political career in Bihar, which is not an easy place to create a career in, because it's already have very, very strong leaders and strong parties in place. Now, what Chirag Paswan seems to be trying to do is to ride on the bandwagon of Modi brand and still, create some distance so that his personal profile is created in Bihar politics. How much of the senior Paswan's charisma and his stature rubs on Chirag Paswan is something that remains to be seen, because he does not carry the kind of aura which his father did. So one has to see this election in that sense is a make or break for him.
Right. Yeah.
I just wanted to add here one interesting dynamic of LJP contesting separately is that they can take away a lot of anti-incumbency vote in certain seats. And I think in case if there is an alliance or understanding which BJP has with LJP, it would be for that factor that they cut into some of the anti-incumbency votes so that the NDA candidates don't bear the brunt in certain key seats. And typically, I mean, all the surveys have given LJP 6% of the vote and about 5-6 seats. But if they can increase it by a couple of percentage points and then basically target the seats which are close contests between BJP RJD or JDU RJD, I think that would be their real value from an NDA perspective. Now, of course, maybe Chirag Paswan himself is positioning himself not for this election but for future, which is that he wants to take up the place which Nitish has today in the NDA alliance. That he will then become the regional part of NDA, where he keeps winning the regional election while completely supporting the BJP at the national level. So that potentially could be the backdoor understanding, but we will see.
Right. Yeah, and I'd highly encourage everyone to check out Rohit's obituary of Ramvilas Paswanji on one of the weeklies. We will probably link it on this episode, right? Ashish, just continuing with you, Nitish Kumar is, again, if not the most prominent, one of the most prominent figures in this whole election, right? But do you think is brand Nitish fading?
As Vivek said earlier, I would think that this term of Nitish Kumar has not been that successful compared to his previous terms. It could also be the base effect when Nitish came to power. So if you remember, if we just rewind a little bit, in 2005, there was an election in February of that year when no one really could form a government, when LJP had done pretty well in the election, actually, which was actually their best performance. But after that, when the election happened again towards the end of the year, that is when Nitish first came to power with BJP support. And he has since been the CM, except a small stint by Jitan Ram Manjhi when he was propped up by Nitish himself. So the first 10 years were focused on quote-unquote reforms. I mean, he and Sushil Modi were seen as the progressive face of the NDA in terms of taking steps. I mean, Sushil Modi did a lot of work on GST, for example, with the backing of with the backing of Nitish Kumar. Even stuff like the taking away the APMC Act, etc. Nitish did this long back in 2006. So a lot of those changes, which are considered good tick marks by the commentariat, Nitish actually acted on it very early on. So it is quite possible that the aura was much higher. I mean, of course, the state budget has since gone up about 10x or so between when Nitish took over as a CM and now. So certainly, I mean, there's been some progress in terms of the economic indicators. But anecdotally speaking, last 2-3 years, especially, perhaps his control on the administration has not been as strong. Law and order, which has been a tendentious issue with Bihar, always seems to have again roared his head in the last few years, at least anecdotally. And the aura which he had in Delhi certainly seems to have gone down, which was the case till 2016 or so. So and the fact that he went back to NDA, of course, then did not obviously endear him with the commentariat until even till the election 2017, or when he really switched back. He was seen as a challenger to PM Modi at some point, as a leader of a imagined cobbled up alliance, right? So I think that part has now vanished from the commentary. So I would from observing from outside, I would say that yes, his popularity, or at least his aura, has taken a beating. Whether people still want him as a CM, this could be a very similar situation to what happened with, say, Shivraj Singh Chauhan and MP, where people had their own problems with the administration, but they also knew that he's still the best fit person for the state, at least for the immediate future. So it might play out the same way. I mean, of course, an MP BJP lost narrowly. Here, the result could be different. But I'm not sure if he will complete a full 5-year term in that sense. And as Vivek said, JDU being a single person party also means that if he is not very active or not very popular, then that vote base has to shift somewhere. And that is what Chirag Paswan is currently positioning himself for.
I think just on Nitish Kumar's aura, as Ashish was saying, I think it would be fair to point out at this point that what Nitish Kumar basically did over the last 5 years has he's pissed off vocal sets of supporters on both sides, right? In the sense that BJP supporters never really have forgiven him for normally, anti-BJP people have never really forgiven him for going back after and cheating the mandate as they see it of having won down an anti-BJP platform. To that extent, I think vocal sections of the society on both sides don't really like Nitish Kumar. And that may have caused this thing in his perception that, he's not really done well over the last 5 years as maybe he had previously. I mean, I would just like to point out what Vivek said about the COVID crisis, right? I mean, it's pretty clear that Bihar has done a really good job today of managing the COVID crisis. Even 6 months back, people were like, "Oh, what will we do when COVID hits? COVID finally reaches Bihar, and this is one of probably the most densely populated part of the world, right? And one of the poorest parts of the world, and he has a mortality rate which is one of the lowest in the world. It is easily the lowest of India's large states. So, bad press because he's angered a lot of vocal people on both sides.
Vivek?
Yeah. So, see, Nitish is a very, very curious politician in the sense that, I mean, at one point of time, his image was sky high. If you look at the period between, let's say, 2005 to 2012, he was rivaling as far as popularity, as far as governance parameters in the state's ranking, etc. is concerned. He was rivaling, even Narendra Modi at that point. And since then, it has been a sort of decline, perhaps due to his being projected as one of the rivals of Narendra Modi around 2013. And this is one of the human failings that once you aim high, and if that is something which becomes unreachable, what you have, kind of starts looking very, very small to you. And this was something that people felt. Even though he won the 2015 election, he left NDA, went with RJD, won the election, proved his point as the tallest leader in Bihar. But as far as governance is concerned, and I mean, anecdotally, I mean, all my social contacts who used to meet Nitish around 2016, 17, 18, etc., always used to find, a kind of a listless leader who is not interested in governing Bihar. And now this is something which has changed a little in the last 3-4 months with the management of COVID, where Bihar has been one of the surprising success in India. Compared to some of the other more resource-rich states, Bihar has done really well. But one of the other things of this COVID battle is that the credit for that is not something which is given to Nitish in Bihar. It's essentially very diffused in terms of bureaucratic management of the crisis, center pitching in a lot in terms of funds, in terms of guidance, etc. And the way, let's say, around between 2005 and 12, all these, governance issues related to law and order or building of roads, etc., which were directly credited to Nitish Kumar, that's not the kind of popularity that Nitish enjoys anymore, even for governance successes like COVID.
Okay, just to add on COVID, it's a very interesting topic, right? Like when in the initial months when the disease hit us, the states which had the capacity were quite fancied, and in the initial months when the numbers were low, there was a lot of analysis around this model, that model, role of individual health ministers, and so on. What happened after, let's say, June, which is when the home quarantine process started, the state capacity became less important in the management of the pandemic, because then the patients were not being, let's say, I mean, the state did not have to, take care of all the patients. A lot of people were just at their homes. So at that stage, that is when Bihar really picked up in terms of its management. Today, Bihar has done the second highest number of tests, about 93 lakhs as of yesterday, after second largest after UP. And despite being the 11th largest case count in India, the mortality is 18th or 19th highest, so one of the lowest mortalities. So, this is a fairly, in the initial months, you would see videos around mismanagement in COVID center, etc. But when the battle moved home, that is when Bihar has really done quite well. It could also be the discipline of the people themselves in terms of not venturing out too much. But I think the testing part has certainly been a huge success in Bihar. There's no doubt about it. Also because it started in the month when there was a huge flooding in the Kosi belt. That is when the testing was also ramped up. So it was not very easy also just to execute it. So credit to the state government and the central support which then came through.
Right. Fascinating. So Rohit, let's look at the various areas. I mean, you're seeing how they voted in 2015, right? How are you seeing this change in this election? What is your analysis of the different areas as such?
Yeah, sure. So I think, Carrie, that's a very interesting question because the regions of Bihar are not as deeply analyzed generally as some of the regions in the other states, right? I mean, when you start talking about Maharashtra, people start breaking it down into regions. Little bit the same for even UP. But Bihar, that doesn't really come through so much in terms of normal analysis. And that I think leads a lot of people to not really understand where some of these differences lie. I think the biggest, if you see this map, now obviously it's very difficult to really break down what is the strength of the RJD, the JDU, and the Congress, right? Because they fought in one alliance, and for all you know, they're just aggregate votes. So if you look at the BJP, because that's the easiest part of it, and helpfully its allies really didn't win any seats. That's the HAM and the LJP and the RLSP in this map. You can just look at the saffron. That really shows where the BJP strength in Bihar is, and it's not, I think I would say unsurprising that a lot of it lies on places that are close to the border with UP, right? I mean, if you look at it, there's a small cluster to the northeast part of Bihar. I'll get to that later. But the real core of BJP's strength in Bihar lies on the parts of Bihar that are closest to UP, especially that northwestern cluster, right? That's what is known as the Tirhut region, where you have districts like Paschim Champaran, Purvi Champaran, and even coming a bit more inland, Muzaffarpur, etc. So this is the part of Bihar that the BJP completely swept on its own in 2014 when it didn't have the JDU. It held on to some extent clearly, as you can see, even in 2015. And in 2019 also, the BJP took the lion's share of the seats here, right? I mean, even in the alliance with the JDU, and if you look at the margins, are large. Some of the heaviest margins in Bihar, I think the largest was in Gopalganj, which is right on the edge there on the UP border. Again, is where the BJP is very strong. One good example there is there's a by-election that's actually happening with the Bihar Assembly election. There's a Lok Sabha by-election for the Valmiki Nagar seat, which is right on the border of the state, like that's in the extreme top left corner. Valmiki Nagar is an interesting seat, right? Because the sitting MP died here. Name is Baidyanath Prasad Mehto. He had won the seat in 2009 on a JDU ticket with a very high margin. He again won the seat with a very large margin in 2019. Interesting thing is what happened in 2014 when he stood on a JDU ticket without the BJP, right? He finished a very, very miserable third. And I would say like one of the worst performances by a sitting MP anywhere. So that really shows the depth of the BJP strength in that part of Bihar. Now coming to the other interesting part of the state, I would say is the northeast corner of Bihar, right? Because that's where you have the Simanchal region, which consists of 4 districts. That's Purnia, Katihar, Araria, and Kishanganj. This is extremely Muslim dominated. I mean, Kishanganj is, I think, 70% or so Muslim. The other districts are anywhere between 40 to 50%. So this is also where the chicken's neck is. I mean, this map doesn't show that properly. But actually, if you travel by train from Calcutta to the north, you would cross Kishanganj. So this is a part of Bihar, obviously, with this heavy Muslim population where BJP lost in 2014 also. Almost all the seats the NDA lost in 2014 were in this corner of Bihar. But historically, when the JDU was there, because there's a very high, obviously very high communal polarization also here, the BJP and the NDA have done pretty well. Interestingly, what the BJP did in 2019 was it literally dumped all the seats in this region onto the JDU. saying that, if you want equal seats with us, even though we have more seating seats than what you're offering, you should at least fight these risky seats. Interestingly, the JDU managed to win all of it, but that's how it is. Now, southeast Bihar, right? That's basically what's called the Magad region. Places like Munger, Begusarai, etc. That is the old socialist communist heartland where the Jan Sangh really had very little presence. And you can see that on the map, right? It's literally a sea of blue and green. And then you move closer again on the south towards UP, you see a pretty heavy spread of saffron right at the end. That's basically what was the old Bhojpur district, right, which is now 4 districts. This is not really, this has traditionally been a BJP stronghold, but interestingly enough, the NDA didn't do that well here in 2019. They, of course, won all the seats. But again, this is an area of intense caste conflict, right? This is where the CPI ML also used to have some strength, where the Naxal, where the caste wars that Bihar was famous for in the 80s and 90s all happened. And that's where I think, because the CPI ML, interestingly enough, joined the UPA for the first time in 2019. That probably made a difference in this region because they used to cut a lot of anti-NDA votes here, especially, which is primarily anti-BJP votes, because BJP is very much the upper caste party in this part of Bihar. So that's broadly what it is. And I think the last region I would want to mention here is Mithila, right, which is the north central part of Bihar. That's your Madhubani, Darbhanga, etc. These are places which have a heavy Muslim population, heavy Yadav population, and heavy upper caste population. And it's traditionally been very polarized, right? Even when the BJP won in 2009, etc. Even in 2014, without the JDU, very narrow margins. 2019, you saw literally an explosion in the NDA victory margin. One of the heaviest increases anywhere in India. Not really sure. I don't know exactly why this suddenly changed here. Maybe there is some movement of Yadav vote also at the Lok Sabha level to the BJP here, vote for Modi maybe. But so that's another region where, again, in 2015, BJP literally drew a blank and it managed to hang on pretty well. But all in all, I think Bihar is more, you can say the story of Bihar over the last 20 years has been saffron slowly encroaching from the west to the east, from its strongholds in eastern UP. Especially Varanasi, Gorakhpur, etc.
Right. So that was pretty comprehensive. Vivek, you could possibly add to that, or I have a question around, Lalu, right? So he is again one of those prominent figures in the whole scheme of things, right? Very interesting person as well. Is there any support for him still on the ground?
So this will perhaps be the first election where Lalu factor, or at least Lalu the person himself, will not be as prominent as he has been for last 30 years. Last 30 years essentially is Lalu Nitish era, right? So I'll relate a personal story as to how Lalu was seen, what was the this larger than life image that he had. So I left Bihar in '95 as a 15-year-old for education to Delhi, simply because there was barely any education available locally in Bihar at that point of time. So we used to go back every year for summer vacations to our hometown, and so my place is Sitamarhi, which is about 60 kilometers from Muzaffarpur, and Muzaffarpur was the rail head. Sitamarhi didn't have the broad gauge rail connectivity at that point. It has come now in the last 5 years, but it was not there earlier. So we used to take trains up to Muzaffarpur, and then from there we used to take either bus or one of the 4-wheelers to reach Sitamarhi. So between Muzaffarpur and Sitamarhi, it's about a 60-kilometer distance. There are some 20 small and big bridges, and every year when we used to go, we'll find one more bridge broken. So that was the image, the story that stayed as far as the middle class Biharis are concerned, especially those who had left Bihar for better things. So 95 is, so in 1990, Lalu was not as big a personality. He was one of the big personalities of Bihar, but not the preeminent personality. The support of VP Singh and others enabled him to become CM. But by 95, he had consolidated power and he was the personality of Bihar. And he had been throughout, whether he has been, in the jail or out of jail, he has exercised iron grip on the politics of Bihar for 20 years. In that sense, this is a very, very different kind of election where his sons are actually going to be tested and not the man himself, because the man has played his innings and he's out of court in that sense. The other interesting thing is that, we talk about misrule of Lalu for 15 years, but Nitish has been in the saddle for 15 years now. And about 1/3 of the voters have no remembrance, no memory of Lalu misrule in Bihar. So in that sense, even his persona, his history, his memory is something which will perhaps not play as big a part as it did even in last election. So that's my take on it.
Right. So Ashish, where do you see, the BJP dithering in Bihar in going alone themselves, right? Where it is traditionally done well as well in the Lok Sabha. So what do you think is the long-term plan for the party as such?
Yeah, this has been a very interesting question, right? Like BJP seems to be doing pretty well at a macro level, but it never seems to have the confidence to, go alone in the state and break away from Nitish clean. The one time they did, obviously they lost pretty badly, so maybe there is a electoral reason for that. But the fact that the party has not made any attempts also. One reason could be that the leadership, the local leadership, was probably always in the shadow of Nitish. Like, for example, Sushil Modi was always supposed to be the deputy to Nitish, and he never positioned himself as a key leader or as a main leader in the state, right? And then other leaders were seen as either too polarizing or too or someone who had or people who had very limited appeal in their specific regions, etc. So perhaps the party did not want to make a run for the state. But it is like as Vivek said, I think this over reliance on Lalu factor and hence the need of Nitish, probably once the Lalu factor goes away, the party will get a chance, because then the contrast can be done in the present conditions. This mistake was made by BJP in MP also in some ways while campaigning in 2018, where the 70-80% of the campaign was focused on Digvijay Singh's misrule. But then that was 15 years away, and the whole bunch of first generation voters who were like 18, 19, 20 years of age had no idea about that period of 10 years of Digvijay Singh's rule. So BJP has been actually actively employing the same strategy in Bihar. I mean, not just for the campaign, but even if you look at, let's say, the last 5 years of, say, tweets of the BJP leaders, they continue to question, like, why is RJD raising this? Because some XYZ happened in the RJD regime. So it just seems that they are diffident about the state. The leadership is not really confident about creating a whole new narrative. And it will probably need Nitish Kumar to end his political innings, or at least become less relevant for someone to emerge. But of course, then Chirag Paswan is also waiting in the wings for precisely the same reason. So quite kind of odd that BJP doesn't want to grab the state, and it doesn't look like that will change in the next 5 years at least.
Right. So, Rohit, the other heir, so to speak, who is also contesting in these elections, probably, will be a key figure, is not just Chirag Paswan, but also Tejasvi Yadav, right? So, your comments on how he will play a role in these elections?
Sure. I think, Tejasvi Yadav is a very interesting question, right? Because I think it ties into the BJP's larger strategy for Bihar, in the sense that I think what the BJP is looking to do, and I may be completely wrong, is that BJP is looking to effectively finish RJD off, right? I mean, the RJD is unique among regional parties in never having had any sort of adjustment with the BJP since 1990. Like, if you look at regional parties, almost every other party has had such an adjustment, obviously not the communists, but everyone else has, and the RJD is unique in that. And I think the BJP is really looking to finish the RJD off, right? It doesn't want to take any risk in allowing the RJD to sort of resurrect, which happened in 2015, right? I mean, Nitish Kumar's alliance with RJD did sort of help the RJD to win in 2015. RJD otherwise has been a party that's been consistently losing elections for almost 15 years. Like it's lost after 2004, except Nitish Kumar's time, it's never won an election. And whether Lok Sabha or state level, and probably that's what the BJP wants to do, right? It just wants to finish this party off. This it's not a party that fits in at all with the BJP for many reasons. I think, including the fact that the BJP probably has an eye on the Yadav vote base of the RJD. But leaving aside that, ideologically the two parties are poles apart, and BJP would really want to finish them off, and that's why I think this whole Chirag Paswan thing makes some sense, right? In the sense that you can't finish off your main opposition party permanently without creating an alternative. And I mean, a lot of people have theorized about this. I have, I know others who have, that BJP can't do that, can't finish the Congress off in MP, because who is going to be the opponent? I think that's where, because people will always vote for somebody else in a democracy at some point. That's why I think this whole Chirag Paswan thing also comes in. And that's where Tejasvi Yadav comes in, right? I mean, in our last discussion on the Congress, which we had, I think, 2-3 months back, we had a podcast on the Congress where we said that Rahul Gandhi is probably, trying to position the Congress for a future where his brand of ultra progressive politics will work. Tejasvi Yadav fits right into that, right? I mean, he's somebody who has no ideological issues with Rahul Gandhi, is fairly on the same page as Rahul Gandhi on all of these key ideological issues. If you look at his tweets, if you look at his speeches, it's very clear that he's definitely a very left-wing leader, seeped in the secularism of Lalu and of, you could say, of the Nehruvian era. I would say even more secular than the Nehruvian era. Fits right in with Rahul Gandhi, and that's obviously an ideology that the BJP doesn't like, its voters doesn't like, and I think at some point it's probably in today's more hyper-polarized context, as we discussed in that podcast on the Congress, not really something that might fit well with Bihar, right? I mean, people might have problems with Nitish Kumar, but do they really want to go with this ideology in Bihar? Whatever people might say on the social justice movement and how Lalu came to power, I think the conditions are different today. The level of awareness on certain issues is different, and that's where I think Tejasvi Yadav has a limit on his popularity, in my opinion, right? I mean, I may be completely wrong, but if you do see a Tejasvi Yadav government in Bihar, you can definitely expect to see it being a laboratory of a lot of social justice policies. You can see a fairly aggressive, ultra left-wing type of things being pushed in, ultra progressive, I would say, not necessarily left-wing types of things being pushed in Bihar under an RJD government.
Right. Rohit, I also wanted to ask you about the Congress party itself, right? So what they can hope to take away from this election. And, you spoke about Rahul Gandhi and, Tejasvi Yadav as well. So what is that generational change that Congress can see in Bihar, once Rahul Gandhi takes over some point?
So I may look like a complete fool on November 10th, right, after the results. But but I honestly think the Congress is sort of missed a huge opportunity in this election. I mean, unless things are drastically wrong, the polls, etc., are wrong, I don't really think the UP, and I refuse to call this alliance the Mahagathbandhan. I mean, it was a Mahagathbandhan because the JDU was part of it. Otherwise, it's just a plain old UPA. I don't think they really had a chance of winning this election. And I mean, the RJD, at the end of the day, is a party that squarely occupies the Congress's space in Bihar, right? In terms of if you leave the Yadav vote. And it also acts as a deterrent to other voters the Congress might want to attract, like upper caste or even Dalits. The Muslim vote, which is the Congress's most reliable bedrock across the country today, the RJD is just squatting on it because the Congress is letting it squat on it. The RJD had a value, say 10, 15 years ago, because it could add, not 15, 20 years ago, because it could add something incremental to it. The RJD has consistently failed in it over the past 15 years. And unless something drastically changes now, I mean, the Congress really wants to reinvent itself in Bihar. It needs to sort of start by dumping the RJD. And for the Congress, obviously, the stakes in an assembly election are much lesser than 2024. Right, and if they lose again this time, then what do they do in 2024? Clearly, the formula is not working. They should have dumped them this time and given it a shot and prepare themselves for 2024, which is, I think, what they're doing in UP. And I think that's where the greater ideological similarities between Tejasvi and Rahul Gandhi, as well as Lalu Yadav and Sonia, right? Because Sonia really likes Lalu Yadav because he's never really ditched the Congress and gone with the BJP, unlike every other regional leader. So the Congress, at least the Gandhi family, does have a blind spot for the RJD, and in my opinion, it might cause the Congress, of course, I may be completely wrong, and they'll come to power in November, and I look like an idiot, but honestly, I think this has been a missed opportunity for the Congress.
Vivek, any final comments before we sign off? I think you're on mute.
Yeah. So if you see the politics of Bihar as it has panned out in last 5 years, this election, looks, I mean, at least in terms of the socio-economic reality of Bihar, a kind of a stalemate. I mean, Nitish, when he came for the first time in 2005, brought in a lot of hope. And you saw improvements in law and order situation. You saw development happening in Bihar in terms of building of roads and bridges, etc. A lot of governance structures put around managing the yearly flood situation. So a lot of things was something which happened, and he generated a lot of hope. Now that hope is something which was missing in last 5 years. First his political adventurism of leaving BJP and then going to RJD, then coming back. So somehow it seems that governance took a backseat. But the way political configuration stands now, it doesn't seem like something which is going to change that. And in that sense, Bihar will perhaps remain at the crossroads only. And even though NDA looks like winning and Nitish coming back, again as CM, nothing in terms of the development of Bihar or moving the needle, so to say, the way it happened in the first 10 years of his rule seems likely to happen. The new leaders that you see are essentially old faces in that sense. I mean, RJD is a family-based party. Paswan's party is a family-based party. Even BJP, if you see, has got same old tired faces. So we are not really going to see anything new emerging. In that sense, it may very well remain, Bihar will remain the way it is. Maybe we have to wait for 5 more years to see if any change in the socio-economic reality of Bihar comes through political changes. So in that sense, it's a kind of a status quo scenario.
Okay, just to add a couple of points. One is on Congress. I mean, they are fighting 70 seats in this election, and if they can manage, so just as a counter to what RJ was saying, even if they win, let's say 30 odd seats, which is what they won last time, they would still remain relevant. So it is probably kicking the can down the road as far as Congress is concerned. I mean, this is probably a very safe option for them. Don't think they will. I mean, they may not gain now, but they may also not lose anything vis-a-vis last time, because irrespective of what RJD does, Congress should win 30 odd seats in my view from the 70 that they are contesting. And to Vivek's point, see, when we talk about a 5 trillion economy, the fact is that the whole Ganga belt has to really transform, right? Like right from Uttarakhand, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Bengal. This entire region, I mean, these states really have to change significantly to make a meaningful difference in terms of the economic indicators, growth indicators, and so on, even the HDI indicators. And I mean, of course, the hard infra is being worked upon, be it bridges or waterways or rail connectivity. All of that is of course useful. But eventually, until these states also have an issue of, let's say, some of the softer areas like healthcare, education, and so on. And while there's been significant movement in the last 2 years in various ways in many of these states, the fact is that Bihar actually cannot afford to be status quo for 5 years. This is not just a Bihar issue; it's actually a national issue, because it pushes back. It's one of the densest populated state. It pushes back the growth of the country in a meaningful way. So I really hope that, irrespective of what the result is, and the whoever forms a new government, there is a fresh thinking around some of what needs to change, like it happened in UP after Yogi became the CM. The same needs to be done for Bihar, whoever comes in. Otherwise, some of this ambition that we have had at national level will remain not completely fulfilled.
Right. Okay, that's kind of a poignant note to end the podcast on. This has been a fascinating deep dive, and we'll all know better on November 10th when the results are out. Until then, we will have an ongoing coverage of some of the key news and events on the Bharat Varta Weekly. You can check it out live on Saturday evenings. We go live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. You could also pose some of your questions to guests like Ashish Chandorkar, who you see on the screen, right? And Rohit Jaraman and Vivek Khetan, right? Thank you all, Ashish, Vivek, and Rohit, for joining us. This was wonderful. A lot of context, a lot of insights. Hopefully, our viewers will really enjoy this as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by the team at Bharat Varta. If you liked this podcast, then don't forget to share, subscribe, and rate us on your favorite platforms. We're available on Anchor, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, YouTube, and a host of other platforms. We started Bharat Varta to facilitate long-form discussions on politics, policy, and culture. We don't necessarily endorse anything that was said in this episode. If you do wish to offer us any feedback on the content or anything else, do reach out to us on social media or get in touch with us on our website, www.bharatvarta.in. The links are in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.